I'm feeling fine, in case somebody wants to know. My voice went away somewhere, but I'm feeling fine. And I was asked if I wanted to not give the class this evening. And I said, I'll just hold the microphone very close. Let's see what happens. I hope you're able to follow. This is part 3 of MANAH SIKSHA. Instructions to the mind given by Supersoul. Dadami buddhi yogam tam idamamupiyantite. Intelligence, buddhi, is given by Krishna for those who want to reach him. Yenamam upiyantite. This is specifically the instruction from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sarup Damodar, to Raghunath Das Goswami, to us, illustrating this slide we saw before. Lord Chaitanya had a desire to personally taste the sweet essence of love of God, and he also wanted to give a gift to everyone. The gift of the path of spontaneous devotional service, Raga Marg. So this is an instruction to the mind to go there, to go on that path of spontaneous attraction for Krishna. In the same chapter of Adi Leela, chapter 4, by hearing about the pure love of the residents of Vraja, devotees will worship me on the path of spontaneous love, abandoning all rituals of religiosity and fruitive activity. And that's embodied in this text, this MANAH SIKSHA text by Raghunath Das Goswami. Here's the logo. Maybe some of you have seen this before. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur personally designed this. It's the logo for the Gaudiya Math. And if you look at it closely, on the right side, there's the sadhana bhakti following the vidhis of worship of Lakshmi and Narayan in their opulent feature. At the bottom you see Archana. At the above you see Pancharatra. So Pancharatriki vidhi, the rules governing deity worship, and the deity worship itself, and the paraphernalia for deity worship. This is the duties or the description of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. And on the image on your right side, there's Kirtan, there's Radha Krishna under a Kalpavriksha tree, in the mood of Vrindavan, in other words. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is the scriptural foundation for that practice. Notice in the section that has Kirtan, there's a drum, Mridanga drum, and just above the Mridanga drum is a printing press. Bhaktisiddhanta called the printing press the Brihat Mridanga. You heard this before. Yes? No? Prabhupada said a Mridanga you can hear for a block or two. And the Brihat Mridanga you can hear around the world. So for the Sankirtan, or the congregational chanting of the messages of the personality of Godhead, this is in the spontaneous side, or the Ragamarg side. Of course, the holy name is at the center, the opulences of Bhagavan surrounding the holy name, and Guru Gaudiya at the bottom, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the top. Next time you go to Mayapur, you may want to notice as you're entering into the main gate of Sridham Mayapur temple, this logo is above the arch. So we're going to go through verse number 2. The first session we went through the first 6. And in the morning we went through just verse 1. Now this is verse 2.
Na dharmam shrutigana niruktam kila kuru vraje radha krishna prachura paricharyami hatanu sachi sunam nandishwarapati sutatve guruvaram mukunda preshtatve smara paramajashram nanumana.
And the translation?
Indeed, do not perform any pious acts prescribed in the Vedic literature and supporting literature, or sinful acts forbidden in them. Staying here in Vraja, please perform profuse service to Sri Sri Radha Krishna. O mind, unceasingly remember the son of Sachi as the son of Nanda Maharaj, and Sri Guru as the dearest servant of Lord Mukunda.
That's verse 2. The series, these introductory verses, giving like the essence of the book. It's in the first 3 verses. So we heard verse 1, Dambam Hitva, Sada Dambam Hitva, give up all pride. And then that was the do not. And the do is with excessive and extraordinary devotion, worship, or devote yourself to objects of transcendence, personalities and objects of transcendence. Now this is again speaking something what not to do and what to do. We saw this slide. Bhaktivinoda Thakur called this book MANAH SIKSHA, the Padati for Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Some of you may be aware, deity worship, there's a book, Archana Padati, Archana Padati, Archana Padati. And this is Gaudiya Vaishnava Padati. It's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's take. So that step by step, one can make progress. So these first 3 verses, this is summary now, this review. The first 3 verses stating the qualification for someone to get on this path. that means us, to get on to receive the gift that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to give. There's some qualifications. And we saw this slide, Atitaram Kuru, enthusiastic and intense endeavor to take full shelter of the devotional path, all the while expecting descending mercy. So the elements are faith, because how can you go on such a path without faith? There must be faith. And faith is nourished by attachment to the association of genuine sadhus. This is Lord Chaitanya's teachings, isn't it? Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastri Koi, Lavamatra, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoi. Sarva Siddhi, all perfection. So faith begins and faith is nourished through Sadhu Sangha. And as that faith increases, fruitive desires subside. Say it the other way. Supposing somebody slackens in devotional service, what happens? Material desires increase. So invest your enthusiasm in the wonderful association of genuine qualified sadhus, and do with sadhus what sadhus do. It's called bhajana kriya. You do those things together with other sadhus. Sadhus means devotees. And faith has the increase of faith in bhakti. The desire for fruitive happiness subsides. So don't slacken. Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes the following connection between the verse 1 and verse 2. At the end of verse 1, there may be certain questions. And one of those questions might be, what's the mood of worship of either Shiksha or Diksha gurus, along with how accompanying that with all of our everyday duties of life. There may also be a question, what's the relationship between the worship of Lord Chaitanya, the worship of Radha Krishna? What's that relationship like? Verse 2 specifically addresses these questions, and another one. If one is always worshipping Radha Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna, how do you maintain yourself? In practical terms, how is this to be done? So that's verse number 2. And here's the translation. Do not perform pious acts, the karmakanda pious acts, nor indulge in the sinful activities prohibited by them. Rather, simply stay here in Vrindavan, perform abundant, profuse service to Radha Krishna. And then this connection. The son of Sachi, Lord Chaitanya, and the son of Nanda Maharaj, Krishna, they're the same. And Sri Guru should be seen as the dearest servant of Lord Mukunda. There's a comparable prayer, not the same, but comparable prayer in King Kulashekhar's writings. Maybe some of you know Prabhupada wanted this. He began a translation, didn't finish. The followers completed it, Kundamala Stotra. His King Kulashekar was definitely on the platform of spontaneous love for Bhagavan. So, one of his prayers, I have no attraction for performing religious rituals or holding any earthly kingdom. Now, he's a king, but he has a kingdom, but he's not attracted. I do not care for sense enjoyments. Let them appear and disappear in accordance with my previous deeds. So what do you want? My only desire is to be fixed in devotional service to the lotus feet of the Lord, even though I may continue to take birth here, life after life. It sounds very similar to Lord Chaitanya's teachings. Nadanam, Najanam, Nasundarim, Kavitam Ba Jagadisha Kamaye. Many of you know the verse. He doesn't want, I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want that. What do you want? Devotional service. Jamani Shore, birth after birth. Not wanting liberation either. In other words, devotional service in that mood is transcendental. There's no bondage, even one has a material body. There's no bondage to fruitive reactions for such activity. In Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary on MANAH, he called Bhajana Darpana. He indicates clearly what Raghunath Das Goswami is not advocating. He's not advocating impersonalism and voidism. It's very clear. He wants shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. He's not advocating rejecting the world or rejecting the finer elements of life. It's refining them and directing them to the personality of Godhead. And it's ekanta bhakta. Ekanta bhakta. That's his words. Bhaktivinoda. Become a genuine follower of pure devotees. Seek the association of such persons and become a devoted follower of such persons and serve them. That's our devotional life. Again, Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes into the topic of Raghunath Das's writing. He says, give up dharma and adharma. So what does that mean? He gives his two explanations. One of them is directly from Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, for one who is a neophyte in the Eightfold Yoga system, work is said to be the means. And for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of material activities is said to be the means. So there's a means, and there's the more mature stage, cessation of material activities, dharma. And so our life is in the mature stage. We don't go to the Himalayas and do as the meditator yogis might do, although I'm sure this fellow is an elevated individual who can live a lifestyle like this. It's not easy. So he has some determination. But work is said to the means for the neophyte. Cessation of work is said to be the means for the more advanced person in the Eightfold Yoga system. But Bhakti Yoga, pictured in the lower left, it's the dedication of all things to Krishna's service. And that kind of blends into the second meaning. I'm just offering to you what Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written in a simple form. There's these three, karma, vikarma, and akarma. That's discussed in another verse, chapter 4, Bhagavad Gita. In that chapter 4, Bhagavad Gita, there's the advocacy of akarma. So karma means prescribed duties, vikarma means forbidden activities, and akarma is work where there's no bondage. So that's a meaning of Raghunath Das saying, give up dharma and adharma. Both the karma and vikarma, give both of them and take to devotional service. So for those that are not yet devotees, they have to be very circumspect. They want to engage in prescribed activities. They want to stay away from bad activities, forbidden activities. And they want to become very calm and peaceful, shanti, internally. Now, according to the Bhagavatam, whether you do dharma, not only adharma, dharma itself implicates the worker in reaction. Dharma has a consequence, reaction, good karma, and one is bound to receive the fruits. One is bound to receive the fruits of good karma. It's binding upon the performer also. So this is be Krishna's secret agent. In India, this probably doesn't mean the same thing as it does in the West. In India, when you were growing up, some of you that are a little older, did you know the Superman personality disguised as a corporate guy, Clark Kent? When it was need, he'd go into a closet and get out his Superman uniform with a big S and go zooming off, take care of the problem. You know that one? Okay. There'll be Krishna's secret agent. Instead, this ekanta bhakti, it's internal. A reminder, this is describing the internal cultivation on the path to being in the association, being spiritually present in the association of Radha and Krishna in the spiritual world. It's an internal cultivation. So activities continue, but as you see in this drawing, there's nice deity and they're offering everything to Krishna. There's their child, there's their wealth, there's their offerings of fruits and flowers, and everything is offered to Krishna. And the association of those who are living like that nourishes ekanta bhakti. From the internal, this is the understanding. From the internal, the external follows. What's inside comes out. And so if the internal absorption and cultivation is everything is meant for Krishna, Ekanta Bhakti, then your life form, the external portion will be like that also. So first comes the internal, then comes the external. It follows naturally. So it's not simply a matter of rules of doing and not doing. It's the internal cultivation that is the point is being emphasized. Raghunath Das Goswami is instructing his mind to remember very clearly Lord Chaitanya and the son of Sachi are the same. Leelas are different. The personalities are the same. Little story. Some of you may know one of the assignments of Rupa Goswami was to re-establish the places of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Yes? And one of the things that was a big anxiety for him is he could not find the Govindaji deity, which was established just after Krishna's departure by his great-grandson, Vajranabh. So there's a long story. My bad voice isn't going to permit me to narrate the long story. He discovered the deity and began worshipping that deity right there in Vrindavan. He sent a message to Lord Chaitanya. Good news. I found Govindaji. He has revealed himself to me, and he's now being worshipped here in Vrindavan. Lord Chaitanya was jubilant. And he requested Kashishwara Pandit, who was very expert in deity worship, to go to Vrindavan, leave his association in Puri, go to Vrindavan and assist Rupa Goswami in establishing the finest worship standards of Govindaji. Kashishwara Pandit didn't want to go. He didn't want to leave Lord Chaitanya's association. So Lord Chaitanya, understanding his mood, gave him this deity, a Govinda deity, and said, when you worship this deity of Govinda, it's kind of like the Utsav Murti of the Radha Govinda deity pair. When you worship this deity, you'll see me. And so from that day, he left. He went to Vrindavan. He spent the rest of his life worshipping Govindaji in Vrindavan. His samadhi is right across the street from the temple. There's a samadhi area. And the deity is to this day known as Gaur Govinda. Gaura Govinda. There's no Radha by his side. It's Gaura Govinda. In a similar manner, amongst the 6 Goswamis, Gopal Bhatta had this amazing experience, a reciprocation with his desire, where from one of his Shilas, this form of Radharaman manifested, and he worshipped with great, great, great devotion. He's a pure devotee. With great, great devotion every day he worshipped his deity. After some time, he felt anxiety. Is that possible? Yes, it's possible. The anxiety was, I'm worshipping Krishna in this form of Radharaman, but I'm not worshipping Lord Chaitanya. with that desire, one day Lord Chaitanya appeared as the deity. And from time to time, according to the moods of devotion, Radharaman would manifest his form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very nice. In a similar manner, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was having his discussion with Ramananda Roy on the bank of the Godavari River in South India, at the end of their discussion, the discussion went higher and 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 higher. So Ramananda Roy had this very clear, vivid realization. You're not just a sannyasi, you're Krishna himself. And Lord Chaitanya smiled and manifested the form of Radha Krishna along with his form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they're non-different. These are three examples. Of course, these are pure, perfected souls, but we're not. But in principle, we should understand worship of Lord Chaitanya is worship of Radha and Krishna. Worship of Radha and Krishna is equivalent to worshiping Lord Chaitanya. And standard in our temples, they're worshipped together like this. Sometimes Gaurnitai, or just Mahaprabhu and Radha Krishna. We don't worship in a more refined way. We don't worship Radha and Krishna separate from Lord Chaitanya. We don't worship Lord Chaitanya separate from Radha and Krishna. At least in the mind or in the heart. They're connected. He's advocating meditate on Lord Chaitanya or Sachi's son as being the same as Krishna. So here's Nanda Maharaj with Krishna, Mother Yasoda with Krishna, and they're not different than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And for that matter, all of the incarnations are manifestations of the original personality of Godhead, Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan Krishna. So it's not just a philosophical point. It is a philosophical point, but it's a type of meditation, an internal cultivation. When hearing about, in the Bhagavatam, for example, any of the forms of the Lord, they're forms of Krishna. Here's a nice example. We certainly know that Prahlad Maharaj was very devoted to Lord Nrsingadev. At the same time, before the story of Lord Nrsingadev's appearance, in the first portion describing Prahlad's childhood, 3 times directly in the verses, it describes his devotion to Krishna. Here's one. Vasudevi Bhagavata Yasya Naisargiki Rati. He had unflinching faith in Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, and unalloyed devotion to him. This is Prabhupada's translation of the verse. His attachment to Lord Krishna was natural because of his previous devotional service. So Canto 4, Chapter 7. Similarly, same chapter, next verse. Krishna Graha Grahitatma. He was fully absorbed in thought of Krishna, who affected his consciousness like an astrological influence. Interesting. And same chapter, next verse. Govinda parirambitaha. He was embraced by Govinda and thus oblivious to the normal functions of life. In the next chapter, chapter 5, Matirna Krishna Parataksvatova. So Krishna's name 4 times mentioned. Why am I bringing this up? Raghunath Das is encouraging, including in the next verse, entering into the mood of Radha Krishna love. That's the padati is to get to that stage. The unique kind of love that the residents of Vrindavan alone have. Now, was Prahlad a Vaikunthavasi or a Vrindavanvasi? Vaikunthavasi. So his appreciation was not that of Radha Krishna. His appreciation was of the Vasudeva Krishna. He was a Vaikunthavasi. Krishna, as the son of Nanda Maharaj, this is mentioned in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary. There's a passage from Brahma Vaivarta Purana where Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, was with his father one day taking care of the cows when a big storm came. Terrible winds, torrential rain, very intense, and Nanda Maharaj was of 2 minds. He wanted to protect Krishna and he wanted to protect the cows. And if he took Krishna back to Nandagram, the cows would be neglected. But he couldn't neglect either one. What to do? According to Brahma Vaivarta Purana, at that moment, Radharani appeared. So Nanda Maharaj considered if Radharani is very responsible, if she and Krishna go together, then they'll be safe. They go back to Nandagram. So that was the plan. And the rest of the Brahma Vaivarta Purana describes as they were going back to Vrindavan, they manifested youthful forms. Lord Brahma descended along with demigods, and there was a wedding. Brahma Vaivarta Purana. Mukunda Preshta. The Guru is very dear to Mukunda, very dear to Krishna. And one should see like that. So that's the end of verse 2. It's the end of my voice too. Here's a little summary of the chapter. Do not identify with being dharmic or adharmic. Dharmic is priding yourself in being a good person. Adharmic and being a rebel. I don't care for regulations. See yourself as being an instrument of Krishna to help to be yourself and to help others come to the adharma position. Akarma position. See Guru as Krishna's friend. See Mahaprabhu as Krishna. So there's the summary. And I mentioned in the morning class, I would let you know how you could purchase this book. There's multiple opportunities, but there's a devotee in Delhi that's a distribution agent for this book. So you can take note of it if you're interested. Or you can go to Amazon.in and input the name of the book and the author. There's a Kindle version and there's a hardcover version. and they'll send it right to your door. Now, this is a shorter class than the other classes. It's a few minutes before 8, and I'll take some questions. We have a portable microphones for those of you that I've not been taking questions because of time, but I'll take some questions this evening.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So my question is regarding I, me, myself, pride.
Regarding what?
Regarding yesterday's class, that I, me, myself, like the pride.
Right.
Yeah. So in day-to-day life, like we see that so many times, like we are in the illusions.
So
like,
many times what?
So many times we are bound by this illusion that this is mine, this is my glass, this is mine. So
Okay.
can you give us a practical can you give us some practical tips which we can implement in day-to-day life to overcome the pride? I mean, that this belongs to me, this is me.
I thought we talked about that. But I don't mind repeating it. You're looking for tips. It was already,
Practical techniques or tips.
Mataji was already expressed. It's not impractical tips, it's practical tips. I understand your question, but I already answered it. I already explained it. I'll explain it again. I'll share a nice story, a Prabhupada story with you to help you understand. Once in New York, later in Los Angeles, both of the leaders, Brahmananda in New York, Karandar in Los Angeles, Prabhupada's disciples, leading, big activities, doing many things. Brahmananda, they're going for a morning walk. Prabhupada, how do I become free from pride? He didn't say practical tips. Because I have so much service and people are honoring me and praising me and appreciating me, how do I become free from pride? Prabhupada said, in the spiritual world, there's a vast spiritual sky in which there's unlimited Vaikuntha planets. Largest amongst them is Krishna Loka. In one corner of this vast spiritual sky is a cloud called the Mahatattva. Within that Mahatattva lies Karanadakshay Vishnu. From the body of Karanadakshay Vishnu, unlimited numbers of universes are expanding from the pores of his body. And one of those universes, there's many, many innumerable planets. And one of those innumerable planets is this Earth planet. And on this Earth planet, there's 7 continents. And one of those 7 continents is North America. And one of those the continent of North America, there's United States. In the United States, there's one state called New York State. In New York State, there's one city called New York City. In New York City, there's millions of people and so many streets. And here we are standing on Mott Street in New York, and you're asking me, how do I remain humble? The big picture is we're really tiny. Now, the tendency to forget that we're real tiny is the problem. Because we don't want to think tiny. We want to think we're tiny. We're really tiny people. So knowledge is the antidote for ignorance. Ignorance is the absence of knowledge. And when the light goes on, of better understanding of who you are, from the spiritual perspective, we're very, very tiny. Although we're very tiny, Krishna is very kind, and he's interested in our love. And that's the thing that we have to offer that's meaningful. Otherwise, what do we have? There was someone over here with a question. Do you have a question?
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Guru Maharaj, I have two questions. One from the today's morning class. One of the slides, it was showing that how a devotee should. It was showing that a devotee should meet the people from different faith. So my question is that many times what happens that there are people from different faith. There are some people who are. We feel that they are fanatics. And if you try to go and preach them, so they will be either like a little more aggressive with their body language, their words, everything. So how do we deal with the fanatic people when we go out and preach? That's the first question.
It depends. It's my standard answer for things like this. Depends on how advanced you are. Depends on how flexible they are. And, then depends means there's many options. You can just walk away. You can smile. You can not try to persuade them anything. Just share. If it's possible to touch their hearts, one of the most effective means to touch another person's heart is your own good qualities. We're not so refined, generally speaking. This age of Kali people, we're not so refined. But when there is somebody that's very refined and very devotional, it's powerful. No, you're speaking about somebody that's a fanatic. So that's, likely kind of like a toxic disposition that you keep some distance from if they're fanatic. For a variety of reasons besides, it's waste of time. They're likely to make more offense and more offense and more offense. And that's not going to be beneficial. It's going to be detrimental. So keep some distance. Depends.
Yeah. Guru Maharaj, the second question, just now we are in the first two sessions also. It's talking about the devotee association. So how do we take the devotee association meaning? I mean, it's definitely more than the simply get together. So how we should, what should be our mood or consciousness or when we actually associate with the devotees?
The first part of your question sounded like, what do you do? The second part was, what's the mood with what you do? The standard answer Prabhupada would give to the first part is 6 loving exchanges. Dadati pratigranati. You know that. Bhunkte bhojayate chaiva. Those are the things. And how does it shape? How does it look like? Depends on the person. Depends on circumstance. Depends. But those are principles of loving exchange. So when you have sadhu sangha, you seek loving exchange. And foremost is the mood of service. But then the mood of service is going to take different shape depending upon, the circumstance and the person. You may inquire from the person, from one more advanced, there's a certain mood. For a peer, there's another mood. For one who's less advanced, there's another mood. But it's service, or service, or service, corresponding to their position, the mood of service. I see Varda's hand is up. Where's the microphone? You have something? Okay, you bring him the microphone, then you take it. Yeah, Varda has the... You're next.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, at the outset, I want to offer you a very, very hearty thanks. In spite of being barely able to talk, you agreed to come here, and out of your love for all the devotees here in Bangalore, I'm deeply obliged, very grateful to you. And on behalf of all the devotees, I offer a prayer that tomorrow, Prabhupada's Tirobhav Day, I hope your voice is fully restored.
I don't count on it, but let's see what happens.
So we're extremely grateful to you for the trouble you have subjected yourself to, and this is clearly an indication of how glorious your service to Srila Prabhupada is. You're literally implementing, serve tirelessly and unceasingly what you explained in MANAH. How somebody has to work in that mood and that consciousness of ceaselessly, intensely surrendering and serving Krishna. All glories to you, Maharaj. I'm very grateful to you. I think that's one of the biggest lessons we're all learning today. My question is, Maharaj, they say that one thing is, when we look at our deity's name is Gandharvika Giridhari. But then we also keep hearing at the back of our mind, we should try to remember that we're actually worshipping Lakshmi Narayan. To tell ourselves that we are worshipping Lakshmi Narayan is actually, if I can take the liberty to say, it's a kind of a bit of a disappointment, let down. How can we look at Giridhari and tell ourselves we are worshipping Lakshmi Narayan? He's so nice, he's so amazing. And sometimes we feel we should relate to him like he's Giridhari. But then there's the words of the Acharya which says, you can't relate like that. But the reason I mention this is because in MANAH also there is this whole thing about with intensity, with great, focus on serving the deities, Guru, etc. Hare Krishna.
You said it several times. Look upon them as Lakshmi Narayan. And my understanding is a little different than looking upon them as Lakshmi Narayan, but observing because of our more neophyte, less than advanced position, we should follow the vidhis of Archana. And the vidhis of Archana, deity worship, says we should worship them in that mood. It's more a matter, so my response to your question is it more a matter of understanding our diminutive position, their supreme position, and in the mood of on veneration, we worship in that mood of on veneration. But the word they kept you saying is looking upon them as, but their name is Gandharvika Giridhari. And so they're Gandharvika Giridhari. Now, the confidential Gandharvika and Giridhari, that's Braja. So as we progress, we can see Gandharva Giridhari or Radha Shyamasundar in Vrindavan, etc., or Radha Madhava, as they are. Because where's the Ashta Sakhis in Lakshmi Narayan? It's I'll say it again. My probably deficient in my understanding and ability to express it, but it's more, the explanation of deity worship is more of the mood with which we worship and approach the deity form is the mood of awe and veneration in our particular stage of bhakti. As one progresses, the vidhis are still observed, but the mood becomes more intimate. And then we can start getting a deeper realization of Gandharva Giridhari until we're purified and spiritually elevated in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan with those names, Gandharva Giridhari. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So all the three sessions were really very blissful and nourishing for myself. So I had a question from the verse 1, the morning session that we had today. So it was given about one should develop attachment towards holy name, one's Diksha mantra to Vrindavan. So can you please enlighten us, Maharaj, that how to develop this attachment?
How to
Develop this attachment towards these three entities.
two things. The whole of MANAH SIKSHA is internal. So it means the mood with which you do. It's certainly possible, in fact, it's probably more standard that persons chant mechanically than devotionally. So the distinction is not mechanically, but with absorption, with attachment, unprecedented attachment, so that you don't start with unprecedented, but it's a striving to be responsive to your question. How does one develop that attachment? It's by recognizing the object and having proper regard for the object. Same for the Gayatri mantras that we receive along with the Maha Mantra, that fully transcendental sound, and not just in a mechanical, complete your chanting, but become absorbed. Strive to become absorbed. It's an internal cultivation. And Guru, same thing. In a common, in the beginning stage, there's such emphasis given on Guru that it's pretty easy. But for it to look up to Guru, Prabhupada, and our other various Shiksha and Diksha Gurus, it's also very easy to become complacent or become familiar or take things for granted. So the advice is, don't do that. Don't become complacent. Don't take for granted. Don't become familiar. But stay. So it's a inner cultivation. This is the human form of life is the opportunity to connect with Radha and Krishna in the spiritual world. Let me not become complacent. This is a rare, special facility given, the association of our founder Acharya and the society and so on and so on. So it's the how to is by recognizing the reality of the situation and reaching for it, striving to connect with that which is fully transcendental and depending on mercy. It's been repeated several times. My voice seems to be going like out the window. So I'm going to stop trying to speak. So I'll be able to speak a little bit tomorrow. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.